Hillary, are we ready to start?
Yes, Chair Kelly, we are ready to go here in Salem Central.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday, October 26th Board of Forestry virtual special meeting. For the record, I'm Jim Kelly, Chair of the State Board of Forestry. Today, we are live streaming this event on YouTube, and all participants are joining this meeting virtually. To ensure our viewers online can follow along with our proceedings, I'll go over some meeting tips. Everyone participating, please silence your cell phones and try to limit any background noises for the duration of the meeting. Remember to mute yourself when you are not speaking and disable your video when not presenting or part of the discussion. For the record, we ask all board members, department staff, and guests to state their names for those listening online. If you experience online technical issues, use the chat function on Zoom to connect with our ODF host during this meeting. For those viewing or participating in this meeting, I'll remind everyone of our general order of operation. There is one decision in front of the board for item 1, private forest accord rulemaking deliberation. After this item is introduced, I'll invite the presenters to begin. For board members, if you have clarifying questions, please use the raise hand function and I will call on you. Presenters, we will do our best to ask questions one at a time. After the presentation, we will open the floor for board discussion and additional questions before a motion is made and voting is performed. This is a rulemaking item and the public comment period is closed, so no live testimony will be available, and any written testimony submitted for today's meeting will not be considered. All right, we scheduled this special meeting to be presented the private forest accord final proposed administrative rules and deliberate before a vote is called. As you may remember, the Oregon legislature directed the board and the department through Senate Bills 1501 and 1502 to develop rules to implement the agreements made through the private forest accord discussions with an explicit deadline to meet. I will do my best to keep us on time and on point during our discussion. So let's move on to the roll call. Board members, please unmute yourself as I call out your name to confirm your attendance and quorum for today's decision item. When I call on you, please state your attendance as present by video. Liz Akpoa.
Present by video.
Carla Chambers.
Present by video.
Ben Doimling.
Present by video.
Chandra Ferrari.
Present by video.
Joe Justice.
Present by video.
Brenda McComb.
Present by video.
And of course, I'm present as well, Jim Kelly. Before I hand it over to the department for their presentation, I'll ask if board members or department leadership have any questions or comments. Cal, I believe you do have some comments.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. For the record, my name is Cal Mukamoto, Oregon State Forester, and I won't have too many comments. As we transition from fire season into the fall and then into the winter, we are probably very gleeful as Oregon Department of Forestry. But today the board will be voting on adoption of approximately 55 new rules, amendment of 39 rules, and repeal of 15 rules today related to the Oregon Forest Practices Act. The materials before you are the result of an incredible amount of time and effort from ODF staff in partnership with Accord authors. Over the last several months, they have developed the packet of rules in front of you today. So with that, I push that over to you, back to you, Jim Kelly, and I thank the board for their participation and continued good work for the state of Oregon.
Great, thank you. I think our presentation is going to be led by Josh Barnard. Ms. Barnard, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Chair Kelly, we are ready.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Kelly, members of the board. State Forester Mukomoto. I'm Josh Bernard, Forest Resources Division Chief. The purpose of this agenda item is to seek Board of Forestry approval to adopt final rule package as directed in Senate Bills 1501 and 1502. As you know, we work closely with the private forest accord report authors in drafting the proposed rules and ensuring alignment with the intent of the private forest accord report. To give a quick background, in February 2020, conservation and forest industry groups offered to revise the Forest Practices Act and administrative rules through a memorandum of understanding to include mediated discussions known as the Private Forest Accord. In 2020, the legislature adopted Senate Bill 1602, which increased helicopter spray buffers, directed rulemaking for salmon, steelhead, and bull trout streams in the Siskiyou region, and set communication laws for spraying pesticides by helicopter. The bill set the accord timeline and topics for making changes to the Forest Practices Act and rules from which the board could apply for a programmatic habitat conservation plan, often called an HCP. The accord concluded in late 2021. In March 2022, the legislature adopted the accord recommendations through Senate Bills 1501 and 1502 and House Bill 4055. Senate Bill 1501 modified existing FPA statutes, directed rulemaking, and incorporated by reference the Private Forest Accord report. The Private Forest Accord report further detailed the recommended changes to be made to the Forest Practices Act rules. Amendments to the Oregon Forest Practices Act statutes included ORS 527-620, the definitions section, which adds aquatic resource and significant violation to the definitions. ORS 527-630 added language to reinforce that compliance enforcement training and inspections are vital to the forests of Oregon. And ORS 527-610 to 770, the operative portions of the FPA, added language that provides department access for inspections and verification of completion reporting. ORS 527-680 covers violations by an operator and adds the ability to require a financial assurance for those with a history of significant violations. And ORS 527-685, civil penalty considerations, allows for increased penalties. ORS 527-714, which covers procedures and findings necessary for rule analysis for rules relating to the aquatic resources, requires a consistent level of protection with the PFA report or if the HCP, if one has been adopted. So it also allows for receiving a report from the Adaptive Management Program Committee and the Independent Review and Science Team as a basis for rule change if they've reviewed the new or increased standards, and it adds qualifiers for the type of economic impact analysis required. Today, Lisa Apple, who has coordinated much of the technical aspect of this rulemaking, will provide an overview of some of the changes made to the rule language since the August 24th meeting, a summary of division outreach efforts, and efforts made during the public comment period. We'll cover next steps and then have time to answer questions. And I'll turn it over to Lisa now.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Apple, and good morning to Chair Kelly, members of the board, State Forester Mukomoto. I'm the Adaptive Management Program Coordinator, and I'll be providing an overview of the rulemaking process. The division conducted outreach to support the rulemaking process through formal and informal engagement, internally and externally. The department presented the rules to 3 regional forest practices committees and the Committee for Family Forest Lands. There was a meeting with the tribes to create awareness of the rulemaking and public comment period, and to provide information about the ability of the tribes to opt into the Habitat Conservation Plan now under development. Deputy division chiefs visited ODF districts to explain the proposed rule changes and get feedback on what type of support the field offices need for training and rule implementation. I will now provide a summary of public outreach, comment, and hearings. Full detail is available in the hearings officer report as attachment 3 of your board packet. explain the proposed rule revisions, and encourage public comment, the department conducted public outreach through 3 in-person events and 1 virtual information session to give the public an opportunity to ask questions and learn more. The table provides an overview of participation. ODF's Public Affairs and the Forest Resources Division collaborated to conduct the outreach. The outreach sessions all took place from approximately 5 to 7 p.m. and offered 30 minutes of introductory information and a presentation, followed by a Q&A open house format hosted by ODF staff. Staff made a guidance document available, quick guide for making effective public comments to Oregon Department of Forestry and other government organizations available in order to encourage participants to comment on the proposed rules. At each location, ODF district staff and stewardship foresters also participated. On August 24th, the Board of Forestry directed the department to open public comment for 30 days and hold public hearings on the proposed Forest Practices Act rule revisions. The notice of proposed rulemaking was filed with the Secretary of State on August 29th, and the formal notice was published in the Oregon Bulletin on September 1st. The agency accepted written comments until 11:55 p.m. on September 30th through the SB 1501.rulemaking@oregon.gov rulemaking address. The department used a variety of outreach methods to notify the public of the rulemaking and to encourage participation. This included issuing a news release, use of social media, and producing a flyer to post in district offices. Information on the rulemaking was also posted on ODF's proposed laws and rules webpage and the private forest accord webpage. The department specifically notified interested parties of the proposed rulemaking, including all Oregon legislators, private forest accord gov delivery subscribers, administrative rule notice gov delivery subscribers, all e-notification subscribers, which includes about 16,000 email addresses, and ODF committee and interagency members. In addition, the agency mailed a printed copy of the notice statement to ODF's hard copy mailing list for administrative rule updates. The purpose of the public hearings was to receive oral testimony on the proposed Forest Practices Act rule revisions directed by the enrollment of Senate Bills 1501 and 1502. The department scheduled 3 public hearings conducted through the Zoom webinar platform with phone call-in participation. Overall, the public hearings gathered 21 comments via oral testimony for the record. The table outlines the dates, participation, and number of comments received at each of the hearings. Staff recorded the hearings and transcribed testimony for the permanent record, which can be read directly in attachment 3. 5 testifiers identified as small forest landowners and testified in opposition to the proposed rules with concerns about representation in the PFA negotiation process, loss of value in land they've been paying taxes on, and concerns that many small forest landowners are unaware of the proposed changes. 10 testifiers from conservation groups, all signatories to the private forest accord, testified in support of the proposed rules, citing their major advancement in protecting aquatic species and habitats, with specific reference to streamside protections and road standards. They also noted support for the adaptive management program to guide the evolution of the rules over time. 6 testifiers from timber companies, all signatories to the private forest accord, testified in support of the proposed rules, noting the rules came from hard work and compromise, citing the importance of the rules in providing regulatory certainty. And they also noted the attention that is needed for project management and smooth implementation at the department level to support the steep learning curve of new obligations. In the comment period, the department received about approximately 1,490 email comments on the proposed rules. 74 of those were unique comments, and the chart provides an overview of the type of emails received. Several organizations engaged their stakeholders to write in support of the rules, which appeared to include Rogue Riverkeeper, Klamath-Siskiyou Wildland Center, Oregon Wild, Wild Simon Center, Oregon Forest Forever, Trout Unlimited, and League of Conservation Voters. In total, we received approximately 1,416 of such form emails in support of adopting the proposed rules. Of the 74 unique comments received, they were categorized, and this table provides a count of comments within each category. Attachment 3 provides the comments verbatim, beginning on page 19, and the categories are as follows. The Committee for Family Forest Lands submitted comments. Under state or federal agency, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Region 10, Department of State Lands, Department of Environmental Quality, all submitted comments. At the county level, Josephine Board of County Commissioners, Hood River County Board of Commissioners submitted comments. Under timber companies, Rainier, Miami Alternatives LLC, and Green Diamond Resource Company provided comment. Under conservation organizations, the Private Forest Accord Conservation Coalition, so a group of signatories, provided a common letter in support of the rules. The Nature Conservancy also provided comment on the rules. Under trade organizations, Coos Curry County Farm Bureau, the Southern Oregon Timber Industries Association, Oregon Forest and Industries Council, Oregon Rural Electric Cooperative Association, and Oregon Farm Bureau all submitted comments. There were also comments from small forest landowners, environmental supporters, and advocacy emails. General observations of the written comments are as follows. Interest from the conservation community as signatories to the Private Forest Accord has been supportive, citing the proposed rule changes as an important and needed update to the Forest Practices Act and administrative rules. Interest from the timber community as signatories to the Private Forest Accord has been supportive, citing regulatory certainty as a critical component to the proposed rule changes. Interest from the small forest landowner community has been opposed. They feel they were left out of the process and monetary value is being taken unfairly out of their land. Interest from the counties has been opposed, citing several concerns, including they will not receive the benefits of the draft conservation plan. Interest from trade organizations has been mixed, both in support and in strong opposition, citing concerns about the process, economic impacts, and recommending specific changes to the proposed rules. The Committee for Family Forest Lands appeared to be in general support of the proposed rules, but had several recommendations on aiding landowners, outreach needs, disproportionate impacts, management, and enforcement. Several agencies provided suggestions for rule refinement and asked for clarification on multiple issues, as well as a suggestion to increase the scope of the adaptive management program. Supporters of conservation organizations appear unanimously in favor of the proposed rule changes. I now refer you to attachment 2 within the board packet as reference to my remaining remarks. This document summarizes changes to the proposed rules organized by rule division. While there were not many changes, the following slides highlight some of the more substantive modifications made by staff to the rules that were presented to you at the August 24th board meeting and filed in the notice of proposed rulemaking with the Secretary of State. In the adaptive management program, rule language was modified to reflect the fact that biological goals and objectives within a habitat conservation plan are essentially static, and previous wording suggested that they may easily change. As a result, the wording was clarified. In the Small Forest Land Owner Division 607, in the Small Forest Land investment in stream habitat program rule. The changes included clarifying language around fish barriers, adding additional eligibility for program participation for bridges in addition to culverts. In the forest conservation tax credit process for determining eligibility rule, the word irrevocable was removed to recognize the ability to remove a deed restriction as provided for in OAR 629-607-0750 Forest Conservation Tax Credit Deed Restriction Removal Rule. In the Forest Road Inventory and Assessment Rule, a section 12 was added as follows. For culverts meeting the definition of having imminent risk of failure, landowners shall repair or replace the culvert as soon as practicable, but no later than 2 years after having been identified. This expectation was detailed in the PFA report, but not included in the draft rule language. It was added to bring the rule set in alignment with the PFA. Lastly, in the water classification rule, the rule language was refined to recognize that the agency can't adopt by reference an unpublished paper. And furthermore, the initial rule language directed an outside agency to act, in this case, ODFW, of which ODF has no authority. As such, the rule language was clarified to resolve these two issues. It's also important to note that some comments and feedback are currently outside the scope of this rulemaking, yet all feedback is noted by the department. With that, I will turn the presentation back over to Josh Bernard to present next steps and address questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Again, for the record, Josh Bernard, Oregon Department of Forestry, Forest Resources Division Chief. The next steps in the rulemaking include filing permanent administrative orders with the Secretary of State to make the rules permanent based on their effective dates. It is intended that this will be completed by November 15th, 2022. It is important to note that the disproportionate impacts as described in OAR 629-607-000 Section 5 requires further work of the department to establish a process by July 1, 2023. If that process, if we determine that does require a rulemaking, the department will come back to the board before July 1, 2023. If rulemaking is required, I may ask the board for a liaison to help with that process as we navigate that. In addition, it is possible that we could find other cleanup in the rules that we have posted today during that time frame. Forest Resources Division staff will begin work on drafting technical guidance as called for in the administrative rules to support implementation, as well as draft appropriate policies and procedures. We will also continue hiring staff required for implementation. Lastly, we are working on establishing the Adaptive Management Program Committee as called for by SB 1501 in these administrative rules. The board will review Adaptive Management Program Committee nominations at the upcoming November 16th board meeting. This will be the first formal step in the long-term process to begin the work of the Adaptive Management Committee. Thank you to the staff who've worked very hard on these rules and to implement this rulemaking in a compressed time frame. And thank you for your time this morning. I can take any questions that you have at this time.
Board members, any questions for Josh and Lisa? Thank you for your presentation.
Chair Kelly, this is Board Member Justice. I'm trying to find where to raise my hand. I can't seem to find it right now. But thanks, Josh. Appreciate the presentation. And I just want to say, I want to thank staff for all their hard work moving this very big process along. And I also want to thank all the authors and all of their work that they've done. And you know, the board is required to closely consult with the authors as they work towards this, and also work on the HCP, draft HCP work, and that input is really vital to the success of this whole process. So again, I just want to point out how much work has gone into this. Also, the significant impact, the significant impact to landowners across the state. And I'm, of course, very sensitive to that. I'm supportive of these rules. The certainty that they bring forward to landowners is critically important, but I'm also very sensitive to the impact that it's going to have financially across landowners across the state of Oregon. Thanks.
Ben Doimling.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, well, first echo Joe's comments and a huge thank you to Josh and his whole team at the department for an incredible amount of work that you have put into this, and very professionally. And so I just want to recognize just how much really good work went into this. I wanted to, this is more of a comment than a question, but sort of just acknowledge the disproportionate impact element for the small landowners. And there is a big question mark that's been left hanging here that the private forest accord authors did not come to agreement on. And I just wanted to, I think it was very clear in the comments that this has an impact on small forest landowners. And I think there's a lot of questions about those impacts still. And I think there's work that the department and the board will need to do to sort of figure that out. And I would gladly volunteer to be that liaison if that was useful to that disproportionate impact work. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think I'm excited to see this move forward, but I think there's work still to do.
Okay, I think we are all noting your willingness to volunteer on what I think is going to be a very important task. Carla Chambers.
Yeah, I would agree with what has been said so far. I think there's just a tremendous amount of negotiation and compromise that has occurred to get us to this point. And, on behalf of the landowners and the environmental community. But I think at the heart of that, legal certainty was essential to reach that compromise. And I think we recognize, we've had just such tremendous public input. We recognize that while disagreements still exist, they found a compromise and a place to land. Josh, I think my only question that remains, I think this will bring peace to forest land management in Oregon as long as we really honor that legal certainty. And honoring that commitment over time is essential. And so codifying that agreement and purpose on public record, I think is, in addition to the rules, I think is really essential, that we don't break, the intent and the purpose of why this came together and why agreement was found.
Okay, any other board member comments or questions? Not hearing any, I will be looking for a motion and a second, and the proposed motion should be that the board adopt a proposed rule package as submitted. Ben.
Before we move to that, I just wanted to acknowledge, as a forest landowner, a potential conflict of interest. Just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you. Joe Justice.
Yeah, and much like Ben, I want to go ahead and put on the record a potential conflict of interest, both for the company that employs me, Manulife Forest Management, and myself personally, of a potential financial impact related to these rules.
I appreciate that. And with that heard, Carla Chambers, I see your hand up.
Yes, the same would apply to me as well.
Okay, great. Is there someone who will make a motion?
Mr. Chair, this is Board Member Joe Justice. I will make the motion to move the rules forward as presented.
Chair Kelly, Liz Ekpala seconds.
That is great. We have a motion and a second. And so I will ask that board members unmute themselves and prepare to vote when their name is called. Liz Akpawa.
Chair Kelly, I say yes to adopting the package as submitted.
Great, thank you. Carla Chambers.
Aye.
Ben Doimling.
Aye.
Chandra Ferrari.
Aye.
Joe Justice.
Aye.
Brenda McComb.
Aye.
And Jim Kelly, I am an aye as well. And with that, we have passed unanimously a motion that the board adopt the proposed rule package as submitted. With that concluded, I want to extend a thank you to all of those internal and external to the agency for your collective work on this rulemaking agreement. Any other comments? I'm going to have a few comments. Any other board comments?
Jim,
Yeah, Brenda McComb, I see your.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
thank you, Jim. Brenda McComb for the record. I think there are several things that are still left hanging. One is the point that that Ben and Joe raised, and that is the disproportionate impacts piece. And that is concerning. I certainly hope that that is something that it can be addressed effectively. The other is that the proposed HCP is an aquatic HCP, which will address, I think, effectively some of the certainty concerns that have been raised. But there is not a comparable terrestrial component to this. And there are species that will not be positively impacted to the degree that they could be with aquatic HCP. So I just want to kind of put that out there as something that should be addressed in the future.
Other comments at this point? So I just want to note that this was an historic agreement, and in it there is so much good. The fact that we have a voluntary agreement between the conservation and timber communities is not just historic, but it bodes very well for the future. I also want to note that we have been, really, as we saw, bombarded with letters of support from environmental groups and those, and also from supporters of the timber industry, and that's great. But as has been noted, we also got a ton of feedback from others representing various points of view, but particularly smaller private landowners. And having gone through all of that testimony, I found it pretty impressive, heartfelt and poignant. But also lots and lots of that testimony was really well informed and technical, and people had really paid attention, and they laid out in black and white the significant implications for many of these landowners, and the disproportionate impact that many of them are going to experience. I just noted Mike McCarthy for one as an example. I thought his testimony was particularly compelling, where they have, even though they are in a wet forest, they don't practice clear cutting, and the rules really aren't working out well. The new rules do, as he points out, work better for people who do clear cut, and in fact incent that to a degree. But I think that's just an example. And so I look forward to our ability to in the future have a process that we can take forward to deal with a lot of these things that we see in this current testimony. It's stuff that the department and ourselves simply can't ignore. Anyhow, that's so, while I think we have to acknowledge that what we've got isn't a perfect, and we're going to have a lot of process to deal with a lot of the details and these impacts, it's still this is a wonderful thing, a wonderful step for Oregon. And we all should be proud that we've gotten to this point. Okay, with that, any other comments? If nothing, then I will adjourn this special meeting of the Board of Forestry. Thank you all.